Time for business. Kate Moody joins us, starting with a closer look at some of the economic implications of Emmanuel Macron's decision to begin easing lockdown measures. Retailers sure to be pleased with the news they can open earlier than expected from this Saturday, Kate.
Yeah, Mark, December 1st was the deadline that had initially been floated that a lot of us were expecting to hear. And there had been a lot of apparently successful lobbying for non-essential businesses to be allowed to open a few days earlier than that. That means they'll now have just 3 days to put into place whatever further social distancing protocol they'll have to follow. They'll be able to open just in time for the holiday shopping period. 4 weekends before Christmas for potential shoppers to make their purchases. Now, many businesses have found ways to stay open in some way throughout the lockdown by expanding their online presence, setting up delivery or click and collect options. Only 27% of small and medium-sized French companies currently have online operations, although some 2/3 of the population does buy online. Many business associations say this switch, even partial to digital sales, is going to be crucial going forward, even after stores are allowed to open their doors and indeed stay open until 9 p.m. starting this weekend.
Restaurants, however, will have to wait a bit longer. And that's led to the government to further extend its emergency funding for that sector.
Yeah, keep in mind that this is going to be after the holiday period when families will be allowed to gather, at least in small or moderate numbers. Reasonable groups is what the president urged, but it could have an implication on case numbers. Now, restaurants which were already suffering under the 9 p.m. curfew, which was instituted back in October, will, if they're allowed to open in January, see the additional challenge of trying to do business in the winter. Will people want to sit outside on cold terraces? And if not, can they ensure that indoor dining will be safe if and when that's allowed? Now, 960,000 people work in the hospitality industry overall in France. Most of them have been on furlough for at least part of the period since March. State aid is going to continue for this sector, which, along with tourism, is among the hardest hit. President Macron saying that businesses that are forced to close until January will be able to access 10,000 euros from the Solidarity Fund or a payment of around 20% of the revenue from the same period a year earlier. That'll presumably apply to gyms and sports facilities as well, which will also have to remain closed for the foreseeable future. Macron also announced more financial aid for the most vulnerable families in France, underscoring the administration's position since the start of the pandemic that they will spend whatever it takes to support businesses and households. Take a listen.
We must also face up to an unprecedented economic and social crisis. This crisis is likely going to get worse, but we have a response which has been our response since the beginning. Whatever the costs we will pay is more than just words. It's been our action and our reality.
Indeed, the president was on fine form when he spoke earlier. The November lockdown, Kate, has had, it's fair to say, isn't it, a large effect on the already struggling French economy.
Yeah, everyone was waiting to see what was going to be announced, but the damage, if you will, has already been done. A new report from the French statistics agency, INSEE, showed that business confidence dropped sharply in November, with managers across the board expressing more pessimism than they had done in months. The outlook was especially weak in the retail and services sector when this survey was conducted earlier on. Well, overall business activity in France dropped around 13% during the second lockdown. That's compared to around 30% during the first stricter lockdown in the spring. INSEE has forecast GDP to shrink around 9 to 10% for 2020 as a whole. Its latest labor figures showed unemployment had climbed to 9% in the third quarter of the year, and that could continue to rise. Even once the initial hurdles are overcome, the damage done to the economy and the workforce likely to last really for the medium to long-term future.
Kate, let's turn to the stock markets then. Some new records on Wall Street. Donald Trump, pretty thrilled about all this.
He was, it has to be said, Mark. There are a mix of factors at play, including progress on a number of vaccines from several labs, but also the signs that the transition from the Trump to Biden administration is indeed going to go ahead. Now, that pushed the major European indices to a positive close earlier in the day, and it helped propel the Dow Jones to break above 30,000 for the first time in its history. It did close above that largely symbolic milestone, up around 450 points at the closing bell. The S&P 500, which is a broader reflection of more companies, also closed at a record high. Now, the Dow has climbed 10,000 points since Donald Trump was sworn into office in January 2017, and the outgoing president almost immediately appeared in the White House briefing room after that threshold was crossed, not to concede the election, but with his eye on the markets.
The stock market's just broken 30,000, never been broken, that number. That's a sacred number, 30,000. Nobody thought they'd ever see it. And I just want to congratulate all the people within the administration that worked so hard. And most importantly, I want to congratulate the people of our country, because there are no people like you.
Now, gains on Wall Street have long been one of Trump's favorite things to boast about, and Wall Street has indeed risen around 40% over the past 4 years. That's more than under the average U.S. presidential administration. It is not, however, necessarily a reflection of the state of the economy, and about half of all Americans, Mark, own no stocks at all.
And that is something very much worth noting. Kate, great to see you back in the studio. We've done a lot of talking at distance because of the pandemic, but it's nice to see you back. And
At a safe distance still.
We are at a safe distance. Let's just stress on a big wide shut there. You can see there is a big distance between us. And we do have masks around just in case, but, you know, it's the way it is. Trying to get back to normal as we can, little by little. Kate, great to see you. Looking fantastic as well.